On this podcast, you'll find interviews with high-performing, successful individuals in life sciences. On a weekly basis, we cover their proven methods, principles, strategies, and mindsets to implement new technologies that scale to meet the needs of people in our world.
Welcome to Life Science Success Podcast. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Don, and I'm a consultant in life sciences. I help companies primarily focus in on growing their people, process, and technology inside of their organization to help them scale. On September the 7th at 12 p.m. Eastern, you will see a link at the very bottom of the slide that's currently up on the screen. It's thescalingmethod.com/strategies. I am holding a workshop that's focused on helping companies increase their capacity during the current times. I've run into quite a few organizations that want just quick tips and tricks that they can do in terms of implementing things to increase their capacity. And so I'm holding this workshop, and my goal is to continue these workshops going forward, hopefully to help companies in our space just continue to increase their capacity. So with that, I want to bring on my guest. In this episode of Life Science Success Podcast, my guest is Lisa Sellers. Dr. Sellers is the CEO of Vector Laboratories, and she's an innovative and impactful leader with a truly unique approach to leading teams. So with that, welcome, Lisa.
Thank you, Don. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks a lot for being here. I really appreciate it. And would you just take a moment and tell listeners just a little bit about yourself?
Sure, I will. So I've been in the industry for over 20 years in the sciences, predominantly the life sciences. I found my love of coming into businesses, whether it was a small business and being a product manager or, business like Vector Laboratories and being the CEO, and really coming into a new team and a new business. And first and foremost, understanding that business, understanding the customers that are served by that business, and then figuring out what is that unmet need and how do you leverage innovation to serve that need. And then the fun part was, developing the strategy to go grow that business over a multi-year period and doing that with people, right? Because at the end of the day, if you got a vision, it's not really a great vision unless you can actually execute against it. And it takes the people to do that. So I've had a great time. When I see a business is doing well on its own, it's time for me to go find that next business to turn around to drive top line growth. And so I'm fortunate to now be at Vector Laboratories doing the same thing.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get to dive in a little bit more in terms of, what led you to this point in your career. What led you to life sciences? What made you interested in being in life sciences?
Well, it was sciences first and foremost. I have to admit, biology wasn't my favorite class. It was actually chemistry. Chemistry just seemed to make sense to me, like math did. And then I fell in love with sort of the multi facets of business at a young age with a high school job. And so I was fortunate to, get the right mentor in college to pursue chemistry as my education and eventually PhD. And pretty early on in my career, I decided to take some risk and take a shift out of being at the bench and being in the lab, and just sort of up and left that and went on a hunt for what that business role might be for me, because I still had that itch to go back into that business world that I had gotten a peek of in high school. Um, and that's when I landed in product management and started, managing portfolios. And ended up in life sciences when that company had to move out of California. It's a lot cheaper to make instruments or reagents outside of the San Francisco Bay Area, particularly instrumentation. And that's when I happened through my network onto life sciences and was hired into applied biosystems.
Yeah, and then as I looked through your career, it seemed like you were, in several different places. So at 10x Genomics, Applied Biosystems, and then Thermo Fisher, were there some of the takeaways that you had from those different
Mhm,
roles that you really leveraged to kind of say, hey, look,
mhm.
this is the right fit for me in terms of, becoming CEO?
Yeah, so that's a good question. It's always easier to look back on the journey and kind of connect the dots, certainly, as opposed to looking forward and saying, these are the dots I'm going to take, the path I'm going to take. I was one of those that was pretty open minded when these acquisitions happened, or even opportunities that came in front of me. And I think that was really what enabled me to just take a chance on things. And really, what I was looking at those opportunities were their strengths. So
Mhm.
when Invitrogen came in and purchased Applied Biosystems, it was what was the strength of Invitrogen? Well, they were great at selling and marketing reagents. And so, how might I, learn that in more depth and leverage that strength of that company? I just come from Applied Biosystems, who was strong in product development and spent good amount of time developing those processes and using them, voice of customer and stage gate. And so each one of those opportunities, it was looking at what is the strength. Even Thermo Fisher, strong in channel. And then when an opportunity to go into sales late in my career came up, I took it.
Yeah.
So I went into a B2B channel for 3 years and I loved it. And it really exposed me to that complexity that and strength of Thermo Fisher. So it's a different way to see these opportunities, a little bit more open-minded and focusing again on the strengths of those opportunities or those companies. And then how might you weave them into, expanding your experiences and skill set, and so then it ends up making quite a great opportunity to, be a C-level, whether it was a chief operating officer under Maravai or now CEO at Vector Labs.
Yeah, whenever I think of Thermo Fisher, the reason why I chuckled is that I just think of an omnipresent company. You can't, if you're in life sciences, you can't turn left or right without sort of finding them again. And so, I just think, they're a great company that has, a lot of products all across our space, right? And,
Mhm,
and what a great experience to have along the way. And then also to be able to sort of, I sort of think about people who can both think tactically, but
mhm,
also, sort of spend their time strategically as well. And I
mhm.
feel like larger companies, train people very well in terms of that ability as well.
Absolutely. And I think when I look back, I mean, Applied Biosystems, Karen Blair, she led us through every year strategic planning. And so you do it over and over and over again. And that was great with the cultures. We really were empowered as product managers to own those businesses. And so after many years of developing strategies, whether it was a product line or a business unit, you still owned your strategy and then you're accountable to executing it. Um, and that could be, getting out in the field and traveling alongside the salespeople. And I have to say, even at Thermo Fisher, when I was in the B2B channel, it was a little bit like a startup because it didn't have all of the embedded processes of Thermo Fisher. And so I also was fortunate to find these areas in these big companies that that were kind of, the up and coming businesses or up and coming areas that could then still be nimble and creative, but leverage all the resources of a big company to grow and invest. So
Yeah.
I certainly enjoyed it.
So important. And then we were talking a little bit about this before the show started as well. What sort of was that decision process in terms of becoming a CEO? I mean, did you think very early on about having this be your destination, that you wanted to lead companies?
Well, not exactly the CEO. I had aspirations maybe about 13, 15 years ago to be a COO because being in product management, you see all the functions, you work alongside all the functions, and you have a deep appreciation for them. And so, especially running the business and seeing how all those functions are really levers to drive growth through your business, and seeing if you could actually harness all of that and use the right lever at the right time for the right business. That's how I saw the CEO. But the critical piece of that was the people, right? So
Mhm.
really being internally focused on executing against that strategy using the people, the processes, and the systems was where my passion was. And I said, I don't want to be a CEO. That takes me away from all of that that I love, and I've got to be looking external to the company. Well, it's not quite true now that I've been in the position for 2 years, because I've been predominantly in private equity backed companies. And so I don't have to spend too much time out there. I actually spend almost no time out there raising money because we already have our investment dollars. Um, I certainly don't have public shareholders that I have to be on earnings calls. So I do spend a lot of time, even as CEO, internally with the team.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't been a CEO of an organization yet, but have filled several senior roles and then have been an interim CEO. And it's an interesting spot to be in, with the level of decisions that you have to make, both managing, the strategy of the organization as well as some of the tactical, decisions as well. And so whenever you think about Vector Laboratories and where you currently are, for anybody that's unfamiliar with it, can you just tell us a little bit more about the organization and what it is that you do?
Yeah, so absolutely, I'd love to. So the company Vector Laboratories has been around for over 45 years. And really, we have this rich history and reputation in making products that were predominantly for labeling and detecting of proteins and biological samples, much like the part of the image that you see behind me. Um, and really it's been built off of this capability of conjugating biomolecules for different applications. And so really where we're going now, we've had two acquisitions this year. It's been a very exciting year. And really not just having a foundation of biology, but now a foundation of chemistry in our repertoire. And so now we have this amazing ability to take this skill of conjugating these biomolecules, so that you can, or our customers can, integrate those products into whether it's drug development or diagnostics development or even life science tools. So we're bringing our know-how and capability to these customers so that their products can come to market using our technical capability around bioconjugation.
And how is Vector Laboratories different than other companies in the space as well that are similar?
Yeah, so what's different is really that Vector Laboratories, we do have this rich customer base of academics, serving our customers in the universities, doing traditional immunohistochemistry, immunofluorescence. So we have this rich base of customers, that allows us to then take those profits from that revenue that we generate and invest them in these new and up and coming areas. So it's a little bit, we have this dichotomy of a matureness that's supporting us financially, but now we also have this opportunity to go and, take some risk and taking some investments in buying these companies and going into this new area of really being a B2B company serving these customers in biopharma in the tool space, including diagnostics and life sciences, and really being a partner for their success. So it's an interesting place to be. And so we're a little bit of mature from our existing portfolio of 45 years, but we're a little bit of growing, building into very new areas, as more like a startup. So it's a bit of a hybrid, that we don't really see in other places, and other companies in ours, in the sciences.
Very good. What are some of the challenges that you faced as a CEO and how have you overcome them?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, one of the first challenges, and was the divestiture from Maravai Life Sciences. Um, because I was so focused on just executing the diligence and getting us to day one, with the employees, that I didn't actually pause it to look around and like, wait, there's no executives here. I got to go build an executive team. So that was one of the biggest challenges. But it's turned out to be such a wonderful thing. Building this executive team, none of us had worked together before. Um, we're all learning and growing in role, but yet we come from this deep experience. And so it's really the common denominator across all of us. And so we're equally passionate about where we're going, how we're going to get there, the values that we have. Um, so that's it's really been a bright spot. Like from that challenge has come this wonderful thing, and just have been enjoying working with this team and helping grow the business.
And so did you have to, like, look at the overall skills of the organization in advance and then sort of think about, as I bring on executives, I got to make sure I fill all these holes because there's, obvious gaps that all of us have as leaders that oftentimes we have to sort of evaluate, especially as we're hiring people around us.
Oh, absolutely. So, I mean, it was all came from the strategic direction. I was fortunate to have been able to develop that before we did the divestiture. And so I knew exactly where we're going and what were going to be our main investment areas. So certainly commercial and making sure that I brought on, somebody with the deep sales experience, um, because that was going to be critical to ramping up on our growth, making sure we hired the right people. It's a competitive market out there, even today, when you're trying to look at hiring good salespeople. But I also needed to be sure that, I mean, the roots of the company was a very collaborative culture, very humble team, because we make our own products. So people were coming in here, every day during COVID. There was no hesitation about people coming back to office 5 days a week to make our products for our customers. So I also needed somebody that was humble and would walk the values, and that when they go to hire, they would also hire people to fit our values. So it was a mix of making sure that, and then also, but I think the other thing was it was a competitive market out there. So how am I going to compel top talent to come work
Mm.
with me? First time CEO in private equity, which in some places can have a bad rap. I love Thompson Street Capital Partners and working with them. Um, and then, I needed to be able to afford to pay them as well, right? And so it was a really deciding what is a value proposition as an employer at Vector Labs. And so, yes, our leaders came in with experience, but they also came with the opportunity to grow, right? And so this was going to be their place to grow and develop. They had a growth mindset, be humble and be willing to ask for help and ask questions. So far, we're only, 2 years in the making. So I can't claim success, but we're having a great time and good results so far.
Excellent to hear. And then
Mhm.
how do you foster a people first work environment at Vector Labs? It's one of the things I saw on your website and just was curious to explore that a little bit more.
Yeah. Um, it sounds simple, but it's not. It takes a lot of effort. And I think about it a lot. And it's not something I just abdicate to HR. And there was a time when we were very short staffed in human resources. And so, of course, I'm going to roll up my sleeves and step in and see what do we need to create. So one of the first things we created was, I just observed we had for onboarding new employees a bit of a checklist, right? So making sure they go through IT, they know their benefits. And it was just like a quick 1 day checklist, get an overview of our company. And I'm like, well, is that really proper onboarding? Because then they come in the next day, and then what? And so we revamped it. We're still only a year in, and learning how to continue to improve it. But it's really the journey starts from when you engage the candidates. And so we have to think about how are we engaging the candidates. I mean, I take the approach that uh, these candidates might be people I work with. I'm going to end up working with day in and day out. So let's already start to communicate. Let me set them up for success in the interview process and do it a little differently than traditional. Um, and so going through the interview process is certainly part of it, but then also you getting them ready to come in for day one. And then we built in some support for the managers around, 30-day check-in, 60, 90, get feedback from the employee, make sure you're aligned on goals and objectives and expectations. And then, keep in touch and then let's see how things go in a year. And then other tools such as we call them vector pals, right? So matching people up with somebody who can help them navigate the organization. Because sometimes it's the systems and processes that can be the most frustrating for new employees, even as a small company, right? Because it's word of mouth. So those are the things. That's just one simple thing, and it was really, um, how do we make it feel like somebody really belongs here early on, not you know, by 1 year or 2 year. And so that's just one thing. And there's many. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the best organizations that I've been in, right, have like the buddy program as well. And, just sort of position you well for success as you're getting started. Cause there's a lot, even oftentimes as a leader that you just don't know. And, there are times whenever you just need to check in with somebody else that's, a peer or, somebody that has the experience inside the organization that can help you kind of bridge that gap. And so, sounds like some really important things to have in place as well.
Yes, and I spend a lot of time with employees, skip level, and just checking in with new managers, getting feedback because it's nothing's better than just getting the direct feedback yourself on how new employees are, fitting in, navigating the processes and systems. So nothing's better than firsthand feedback from employees. And sometimes I do it in groups, sometimes I do it one on one, but that's all part of that employee first culture.
Very good. One of the other things that I read was that you're very passionate about mentoring and inclusion. Can you share with me some of the initiatives that you've brought as well to Vector Labs and the things that you've implemented to support it?
Yeah, so part of it is walking the talk, right? So I spend a lot of time doing it myself, sharing with employees how I do that, who I do that with, and then also bringing in community members. So one thing that we've done is engaged with the local Newark school system. And so, because yes, there's a traditional way of mentoring and coaching your own employees. Um, but I also show that you can also do this in the community and combine community service with coaching and mentoring. Um, and so we've engaged the Newark High School, brought some of the students in to learn about science and what we do it here at Vector Labs, but also to hear about how we've made choices. Different employees have made choices in their career and navigated education, navigated that first job, navigated a job here at Vector Labs. And in sharing those stories, you're in essence coaching some of these young people on that there are endless opportunities for them to come into biotech. They don't have to be great at chemistry in order to come into biotech. They don't have to have a PhD. There's plenty of roles for different levels and different interests of people to come into biotech. So that's one example in combining because our employees here do enjoy community service. And so it's a way for us to combine how do you, because it doesn't always have to be the senior people coaching and mentoring the junior people. There's also junior employees that can also coach and mentor young people in high school,
Yeah.
right? And so it's really teaching the employees this gift of dialogue and feedback, right? Of stories and learnings that we've all had along the way. And so that's just one simple example that we've brought, and I have to say it's been an effort by not just myself, some of the folks here at Vector Laboratories that have a passion around both mentoring and coaching as well as community service.
Very important to have. And I feel like it helps to broaden your perspective as well, both as a leader as well as just the impact that your company is having, is also expanded by this idea that um having more inclusive programs just seems to help that as well.
Mhm.
How do you envision the future of life sciences as an industry, especially in the wake of some of the technologies that, we just keep seeing one thing after the other, I feel like in our
Yeah.
industry. And I feel like it's one of the more exciting things to watch. But at the same time, there's a lot that's coming at a lot of companies.
Yes, there is. I mean, there's two things that excite me the most because I came from, for many years, the world of genomics, just seeing how much genomics and proteomics are coming together, right? This crossover between genomics and proteomics. And so you see these genomic companies really looking to enable proteomics as well and bringing both pieces of information to understanding biology. So that's exciting. So no longer will have these silos across, whether it's genomics, proteomics, or glycomics. I think that this continuum is really where we're headed with innovation and technology and understanding. But the other one that's exciting is always been eager to see high tech really come in and blend with biotech. And so certainly the exciting opportunity that AI has to take our wealth of data, if only we had all the publications of what didn't work, and harness that information to map like where we should go next, because we know the human brain can't fathom that amount of data. And so that's exciting to me, is to see the good of AI really help us understand all this knowledge that's out there and available in the global scientific community to accelerate whether it's drug development or these innovative tools to do even further discovery in biology. Um, Both are very exciting to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is an interesting time, and I do look forward to the future. There are a few questions that I like to ask every guest. One of them is, what is one of the greatest leadership lessons that you've ever learned?
Uh, well, I actually had one brought back to me just last week, and more in the context of personal life. I have a, a young daughter who's gone off to college. And for those of you that have experienced that, it's an interesting change. And it's my first in life. And so I had a childhood friend remind me of something that I've used in work, and it was really, um, just a poignant time for me. And the advice is really to be flexible and
Mm,
open to the possibilities, um, and how freeing that can be when you are, because you um, let go of those expectations that may not actually ever come about. You give up control, and it isn't completely freeing because now you're open to the possibilities and the positive possibilities. Um, so which is what I've really taken in my career,
mm.
and being that open to what could come next. It's just much harder when you then go and apply it to your own personal situation and personal life. But I find that these nuggets of advice are actually transferable to work and home life, because the common denominator there are human beings. And so that was one piece of advice that I had heard long time ago, and I lived in and breathed that in my work. And it was a healthy dose of reminder that it's just applicable in your personal life as well.
Yeah, I feel like as a parent, I mean, so my kids have been out of the house for a while now, but as a parent, I feel like you go through these early sort of waves, right? Your child goes from, let's say, crawling to walking, and certainly whenever they're walking, you don't want them to fall, but at the same time, falling is a part of like learning how
Yes.
not to fall. Um,
Yes.
and this continues throughout time, and then eventually you get to the point where you're like, they are now becoming an adult to the point that I can't sort of protect them at the same way that I could have before. And now you're
That's
kind of
right.
counting on that experience and having to let go. But like you said, I mean, it applies to your professional life as well. You also can't do the same thing with teams or companies. You can't sort of
Hmm.
control everything. You have to,
Exactly.
kind of somewhat trust along the way.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
There are three questions that I like to ask every guest. What inspires you?
No, I, the possibilities, honestly. Um, like I just said, the exciting things that are to come with innovation, not only in our space, but the high tech world, possibilities in the companies that I'm in. Um, that's what excites me. I'm always forward looking, which is probably why I like change. Um, and, and it's the opportunity, because if you look back, I mean, 10 years ago and what played out over the last 10 years, I mean, we wouldn't have predicted much of this, but it's exciting. The 10-year journey has been fun. And so the opportunity of what's the next 10 years lies ahead is exciting to me, because we don't know it all, but it'll be fun navigating it all.
Absolutely. What concerns you?
Ah, that's a good question. Um, I would say probably the thing that concerns me the most is people's ability to adapt to change.
Mm.
Um, because I think things have, because I see it whether it's in home or in work. Um, I mean, I've certainly going through a lot of change here at Vector Labs. And if you think at how rapid things are changing, right? I just referenced the last 10 years. I mean, if you go 20 years back, I mean, things didn't move as rapidly as they did this last 10 years. And so I think, that's what brings me to hope. So while the people's willingness to accept change is what concerns me is that um, we are pretty resilient people, and when you find that the change will bring about good, um, I think that's what keeps most of us going, and then we'll pull those people with us that might be a little more resistant, and help them see the light of why the change is positive, because they'll be so much ahead of us. I think, whether it's AI, the things that I talked about, or new technologies that we don't know, both those things are gonna force us to ask ethical questions that we haven't asked in the past or should be asking today and are not. Um, it's that's the exciting thing, is that we'll get those opportunities to ask those and answer those questions. But it'll be challenging. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, it's interesting because in terms of like implementing change inside of organizations, a lot of the organizations that I've worked with, we sort of, will implement a change and will allow the organization to stabilize for a very short period of time and then implement the next change. And eventually people just can't look backwards. There's no way to possibly go back to the old way of doing things or thinking of things. And now I just think, we're almost in a constant state of change naturally anyway, because of a lot of things that are coming at us, on a daily basis. But, there's still this level of stability that people are looking for in life. And so, figuring out how do you balance that with the places that most organizations need to go. As somebody that helps to grow organizations, it's one of the key challenges that we oftentimes have to talk about, as we go through the implementation plan as well.
Yes, no, it's a very good point, because through change comes the growth, right? And the businesses are making the change so that we can be here for the next 45 years,
Right.
right? It's not just because we're bored or we want to make our mark. We actually want to sustain employment for people, and still sustain, all the things that come from serving our customers and the outcomes of our innovations to advance science. But um, I think the thing is folks like myself who love change, it's reminding people of the things that are staying the same, because not everything gets disrupted.
Mhm.
There are things that need to stay consistent, in how we work, how we make decisions. It's all those things are still going to be similar, even if some of the environment around us is changing.
Absolutely. Last question, what excites you?
Uh, what's ahead that I don't even know what's ahead. And I think even in Vector Labs, I mean, I'm so excited about the companies that we bought this year, and the people that I've been getting to know, and just their excitement, especially because I've been through acquisitions before, and seeing responses to those by employees. Um, and so it's just been so wonderful to see that these employees love that we love their technology, love that we're excited about the customers that they serve. Um, so it's just wonderful to see the receptivity by these two teams, in Scottsdale and Ohio. So I can't wait for us to keep doing more with what we have, more in commercial and more operationally, because it's turned out to be such a great business. I'm only 2 years into the role and 3 years at the company, and yeah, it's fantastic.
Well, Lisa, thank you so much for coming on the Life Science Success podcast and sharing with us everything about Vector Labs and about your career journey. I wanted to say thank you so much for being here. And thanks so much for sharing with me about Vector Labs. I really appreciate your time and for being on the show.
Great. Thank you so much, Don.
Thank you for listening to Life Science Success. For complete details about this podcast, including show notes, how to get in touch with guests, and more episodes, please visit www.lifesciencesuccess.com. If there's someone you'd like for us to invite to the show as a guest, please let me know by sending me a message at the podcast website. Please click subscribe on your favorite podcast app. share the podcast or tell a friend about it. And last but not least, rate the podcast. Thank you again.